This is the fifth of what we expect to be a great many webinars with Canadians who've dedicated their careers to learning about the art and science of insurance, sales, and service. Webinars in this series are now scheduled through the end of September of this year, and more are being added daily. Over the years, I've observed that every successful insurance agent whom I've met has succeeded differently, even if they're in the same field or deal with similar clients, and even if they're related and in business together. That's what makes the sale and servicing of insurance one of the best careers that I can imagine. It's possible to become a success in our business with diligence, integrity, and experience. With this webinar series, we intend to prove that any type of person can succeed with time and hard, thoughtful work. Our goal is to create a video record for each of these masters of insurance, so that some of their experience and expertise will be available to anyone who'd like to learn from them in the future. Today, we have Charlie Pielsticker with us. Charlie is the president and CEO of Pielsticker Insurance Agency Limited in Toronto. Charlie deals with high net worth individuals and families and works with them to develop and implement cost and tax effective strategies to preserve the value of their estate so that they can leave a legacy for generations to come. Charlie is always thinking about tomorrow and believes that we should try to leave this world a better place than we found it. And he exemplifies that. Charlie is a past chair of CALU, the Conference for Advanced Life Underwriting, and has given back to the profession for most of his career. He is the founder of the current form of Particip-Action, and he is the founding chair of the Learning Partnership, better known as Take Our Kids to Work Day event, and we'll be talking about those today. I've known Charlie for many years, and like most of the Masters of Insurance we are interviewing in this series, he's an extremely busy person. And like most, he's the sort who you can always depend on to get something done without any direction or additional encouragement. Again, as we'll hear today. Good morning, Charlie. And thanks.
Morning, Lawrence.
Charlie? Yeah. Sorry. Good morning, Charlie.
Good morning.
So, Charlie, this isn't your first career. You started in finance, but not in insurance. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, thanks, Lawrence. And before I even start on that, I want to, first of all, congratulate and thank Lawrence Keller for initiating this series. And I know that others have done and will continue to do so. And I think it's even more prescient in today's environment, where we globally are starting on a brand new chapter of everything in the world, and it's all happening at one time. And so that what Lawrence has initiated here is something that probably takes on more importance, in that tomorrow is going to be definitely a lot different than today. So his initiative and his perseverance and so on in creating and developing this is going to be even more important going forward. Coming back to your question, so I just wanted, I really have to thank and congratulate you on that. But you asked me about, no, this wasn't my first career in starting off, was in the investment business. And initially with training with Merrill Lynch, and both here in Toronto as well as in New York, and then migrating over into two other firms. One was Dean Witter, and the last one was Draper Dobie.
So why did you then come into insurance? How long were you in finance, and why did you come into insurance?
So I think the first thing, the best training that I had, and which was in the finance business, which you asked about there, was with Merrill Lynch. And I went around, I knew I wanted to be into the financial services business. And I also wanted to get the best training that was available. So I went around to a number of different firms, just asking what type of training, what type of background, and so on. And at that time, certainly Merrill Lynch was outstanding in that they offered training both in Toronto as well as in New York. And so I had the the best of that, and which was for I don't know, 6 or 9 month training period. And that launched into the financial services industry, which took me both from individual sales as well as institutional, as well as covering companies and individuals in Canada, the United States, and we lived in London, England for a couple of years, and therefore met and talked with a number of financial institutions all throughout Europe.
I'm interested in how the training at Merrill Lynch served you as you came into insurance. I still like to know why you came into insurance, but also how that educational process benefited you.
Thanks, Lawrence. And you know, the Merrill Lynch was really focused on taking people from across North America at that time and training them to be the best that they could in terms of going back into their field and developing a sales force. So it's how to develop a work, how to develop questioning. And I think there was right at the very beginning sort of a focus that I have always had on what I would call an 80-20 rule. And 80-20 standing for when you're in a conversation with anybody at any time, if you're able to, you spend 20% of the time asking questions and then having the other person or people talking for 80% of the time, that has been a good interview. And that really emanated out of Merrill Lynch in there. And so that is carried through regardless of where, you know, my career has taken, both in and even throughout going and talking with a family here today. What is it that they want to accomplish? And if you can get anybody talking 80% of the time, that's probably the best interview that they will have had.
You weren't in Toronto before you came into insurance. You came back to Toronto, didn't you?
Came back to Toronto. I've been we lived in London, England. And so the people and this was all cold calling to banks and investment companies in Switzerland and Ireland and Scotland and France and Germany. And it was the same thing in going in and meeting with them and asking questions. What were they looking for? What did they want? How could we help? What were the good, bad, and uglies that they had seen over a period of time? And so it really doesn't matter what country, what business you're in, or what relationship you're in. An 80-20 rule will certainly start the ball rolling and continue on from there. What brought me into the insurance business? I think that was your question in there. Thanks, Lawrence. So when I came back to Toronto, and we had 3 children at that time, and looking around, and I did, certainly the insurance business was not something high on my radar screen then. But when I looked around, and what I did want was to be in the financial services industry, number 1, and also looking for independence, number 2, and then looking for a way to make a difference. And when I moved around into the various companies and looking for things, I saw that a company at that time, it was Excelsior Life, and had a new investment or a new insurance product. So I said, okay, well, that means that there is a vehicle, an instrument, a financial instrument, and that would give a door opening, even if people had been involved with insurance previously. So that was using that as a vehicle. I was with a branch at that time for about 1.5 years, and then struck off on my own and have been totally independent ever since then.
So you came back to Toronto. You had no clients, and you were in insurance, but you're really a finance guy. How did you make your first clients? How did you find them, and what did you talk with them?
I think as we have all seen, and whether it be with a Merrill Lynch or whether with an Excelsior, whether it be with a London Life or a PPI or any other organization, it's take your top 100 people that you know and write them down, and then go through methodically, talking to them, opening the door and saying, "Hello, Lawrence, I've got something I'd like to come and talk to you about." And they would say, "What is it?" And I don't know, but there's always something, if you've got something new and different, that at least gives you an opportunity to get the door open and go from there. So it was simply taking the top 100, writing it down, and beginning to mine through that field from there.
Did you start with high net worth individuals and family businesses? What sort of clients did you start with?
So they were all business people and all professionals right from the very beginning. And that had been my background, both at school and so on, with those people. So it was not high net worth people as would be defined today. But they were all either professionals or business people. And that was an excellent growing period. You and I are in a very entrepreneurial environment, i.e. in the insurance business. As you identified earlier, everybody does it differently. But a constant theme is going to be that each individual is that. They're individuals and they're going to carve their own way. And so an entrepreneur relates to other entrepreneurs. It's much easier to relate entrepreneur to entrepreneur rather than entrepreneur to bureaucrat. So that is a way of I think the language of an entrepreneur is pretty well the same.
You alluded earlier to the questions, asking questions, and to the 80-20 rule. What sorts of questions? Were they concept questions? Did you dig into the people? How much did you learn of them?
A lot of it, and thank you, Lawrence, a lot of it would be people questions to begin with, and the same thing today, and starting off a conversation with you or with Chris or anybody else is going to be, well, tell me about your family. Tell me, and I'll do that today. Starting off a conversation with somebody, not about business, not about politics, not about the stock market, not about insurance, not about estate planning. It's asking about the family. What is the thing that makes that person get up and shine? And I think everybody at that very beginning will start talking about their family. Tell me about your sons, your daughter, your wife. Tell me about other things of your background. And that opens up a lot of doors, not about the business. And I think today, as a perfect example, one individual and one family that we have been, I would say, courting for 3 years, 3, 4 years, 5 years. I've known the individual for a lot longer. And through all of the interactions with the individual, I've never once mentioned the word insurance. And that's still coming around, and it's still coming together. And the family does need tax and estate planning. He knows it, his wife knows it, his wife is pushing him. He's not there at the present time. He hasn't quite crossed the line for whatever personal reasons there are, but we keep on collaborating and keep on moving forward. He knows he has to. It will be on his time.
You always seem to me to be a very methodical guy. How much research do you do about these people before you start talking?
And I think with everybody, and thank you again, I think everybody, when in looking for an individual, Generally, if I don't know them, I will use the 6 degrees of separation, look around for somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody to get an introduction to that individual. And once a target has been identified for whatever that reason might be, it's a matter of going around and getting an introduction if I didn't already have an entree to that person. And it will be, again, what is the reason for getting together? There's a different purpose in each situation in talking with an individual. And so sometimes it might be social, sometimes it might be a coffee, sometimes it might be out of a meeting with another person that you know, 3 or 4 people or 5 or 10 people getting together, and you identify that there is one person that you did want to get to meet and finding a reason to get to meet them. So do I look up that person? Do I dig into their background? Absolutely, yes. Do I look on social media? Yes. Do I ask questions about people who might know the individual, so that by the time that we do come together, I've got a fairly good idea of the nature of that person. Sorry,
That's all right. So you've been working, you work with families and with people sometimes for quite a long time before you actually do business with them, and then for many, many years thereafter. It seems that over the years, there have been aspects of dealing with businesses, with small businesses or closely held businesses in particular, that you've emphasized. And one of them seems to have been the capital dividend account. Can you talk to me about how that's influenced your relationship with your clients over the years?
well, a lot of that, Lawrence, is going to be looking at dialoguing with lawyers and accountants. And that's where a lot of the referrals are going to be coming from. And for every lawyer, especially accountants, you can talk about, there are 3 aspects from any life insurance situation that make it different than any other financial instrument. One is that the proceeds are always going to be tax-free. Another one is that any investments into this instrument are going to be tax sheltered. And the third thing, as Hemmelball Sarah would say from Manulife, and I think it's a great phrase, would be the holy grail of tax planning, i.e. the capital dividend account. And I think those 3 items together, you know, you say, okay, if you, when you're looking around at any other financial instrument, these are the 3 things that truly do differentiate. And then the question is, how do you use, what do you use? You know, how do you move in and construct a solution using those 3 things: tax-free, tax sheltering, and CDA, or the holy grail of tax planning.
You just mentioned lawyers and accountants and referrals. So does most of your business today come by recommendation, by referral? Do you cold call still?
Yeah, so 2 things. One is, you know, is from clients and asking them if we have done it, if we have completed a certain transaction for somebody, and asking for a referral on that. The second thing would be, you know, every lawyer or accountants in particular, they can do all kinds of tax planning. They can't do terminal tax planning. And so that the complementary part of working together with them is recognizing their part in the total equation and total planning for an individual, and then complementary coming in and collaborating with them in either financing a tax liability, eliminating a tax liability, or enhancing an estate, really from the benefits of tax sheltered investing and the capital dividend account.
How many clients would you be working with at any given time?
So there are two or three things. There's always, there might be 4 to 6 prime people working on at any point in time. And then there are others who are, are going to take longer and longer. So is there a plethora of, are there hundreds of people out there that we're working on? No, there aren't hundreds. There really is a limited, focused, targeted group of people to be working on.
Focus has always seemed a big part of who you are to me. And you seem to focus intently on things. Which brings me to something we discussed earlier, which is your charitable work, your benevolent. How much time do you spend on your business, and how much time do you spend on these charitable or benevolent activities?
Thanks, Lawrence. Well, I've always felt, and together with my wife Sue, that volunteer work has been very important both to us individually as well as to our family. And so that while our kids were growing up, I was involved with their schools, and Sue was as well. She is still a very active volunteer today. And I'm in the process of starting up another volunteer activity, which is, and I would spend anywhere at certain times, it'd be over 50% of my time on volunteer activities and getting, you mentioned 2 organizations in particular. One was the Learning Partnership and the other one was Particip-Action. And pulling together, first of all, the concept, secondly, the raising of the money, and thirdly, pulling together a board of directors from across the country. That does take a lot of time in doing so. And that is the same way as you go about and I go about in developing a business. If you want to get the activity, you ask, well, I know who I want to meet. Find a way to meet with that person. And I was using that exactly today.
So tell me, the Learning Partnership was first, wasn't it? Let's take your kid to work day. Tell me about that. How did that start?
Well, great question. So I'd seen an article in Fortune magazine, and it was talking about executives in the top 1,000 companies in the United States, and that there was over 60% of them that were active with primary and secondary schools. And I said, active with primary and secondary schools, people from business? They're always identified with colleges and universities and on the boards and so on. And I saw that by asking questions from people out of Louisville, Kentucky, and Washington who stood out, what had they done? What had they done to bring, and they had developed a partnership between those in business and the educational community, primary and secondary schools. So I came back here and talked with an individual who was head of the Metropolitan Toronto School Board. And that is a central school board that really passes out billions of dollars a year to the 17 school boards in the Greater Toronto area. 17 school boards in the GTA, and said, holy smokes. Anyway, talked to him about doing a partnership, having a partnership with the idea of building the #1 educational system in North America. And he was a great guy, and he agreed. So it was for him to bring together the 17 directors of various boards of education. And it was for me to come up with 17 people who are presidents, chairman, or executive vice presidents of various companies. And that included Imperial Oil, CIBC, Bank of Nova Scotia, Hewlett Packard, IBM, KPMG, and so on. And it was going from one to another to another. And as you know, it's sort of a building block. You start with one person and you say, well, who do you know over there that might do, or who do you know? And by the time we came together, we had put together a platform of what it would look like, this partnership between 34 different people, 17 directors of education and 17 presidents or chairmen of various companies. And I'll never forget that we had circulated a document that we had done together. And we had gone to the school boards and we said, okay, what do you want us to work on? What are the 4 things you want us to work on? They said, well, nobody's ever asked us what we want. They always have ideas as to what to do. And this gets back to the 80-20 rule again. Ask what they want and then come up and see if you can provide a solution. And that's exactly what we did. And the first meeting, it was 12:15 at a place that no business person had ever been to. It was at Yonge and York Mills. And for a 12:15 meeting, 34 people were invited to this lunch. And the amazing thing, out of 34 people, 33 were there by 12:15. I mean, you never heard of such a thing. But they knew what the purpose was. They had been communicated. They knew that we were bringing together, that we were going to be collaborating. And they knew that of the other people that we were collaborating, and it was on a peer-to-peer basis. And at the end of that luncheon, which was, we got every single person in there, I gave them 3 minutes to talk about whatever they wanted. You know, we had people from the far left and people from the far right and all that. And it came together. And so we had the beginning of the learning partnership. And that was also within 6 months, that was the beginning of Take Our Kids to Work Day. And that then spread across the country. And so we started off with, and not one director of education had ever met with the chairman or president of any of these companies. And although every single one of those companies was doing something with a board or a school and so on, not one of them knew what each other was doing. So there was no collaboration. So what we did was bring together and got focused. And that was the beginning of the learning partnership.
Okay, so there's a consistent theme developing here: schools, children, education, helping them to become better people and better adults. And then there's Particip-Action. Now, Particip-Action came about, I think it was dormant, had been for years. And at the time when Mr. Martin was Prime Minister and Sheila Copps was Minister of Culture, there was no money. So tell me how Particip-Action was revitalized.
Thank you, Lawrence. So that was great fun. And you know, coincidentally, I had read an article in the New England Journal of Medicine. This was what you get from reading magazines and so on. And it talked about the children born today would have a life expectancy of 2 to 3 years less than their parents. I said, that's absolutely ridiculous. That has nothing to do with kids. That has to do with us. We're the parents. We're the people guiding them. What are we doing about that? What are we doing to have a national focus or an international focus on the health of the children? And so I began with there. I went to the board was still in existence. There was the former president, who was a great guy. And they had no money, as you mentioned. They had nothing, absolutely nothing, other than a brand. And a brand that was known by identified by 83% of the population. I said, well, that's phenomenal. You've got a brand. Now let's build something around it. So we ended up putting together a national board of 21 people. I was able to go down and put together a platform and went down to Ottawa. We raised, I think it was $23 million. Tony Clement was one of the ministers and Michael Chong was the other minister. One was Minister of Health and the other one was Minister of Recreation, I think. So Sports and Recreation. So we raised $23 million and had a board of 21 people from across the country. And that was the beginning of the rebirth of by collaborating and getting people asking the boards of directors, asking the school boards and so on, what is it that they wanted, and then providing a solution.
So by now, you're developing pretty good name recognition for yourself as well. You've been successful in developing two very successful and continuingly successful enterprises, along with government, bureaucrats, and business people. And you do business with business people. Is there some relationship that develops at this, as you do these projects?
You know, I think the common thing is getting people and collaborating, finding a single, what is it that they want to do? What is it that we can bring to the table? And by collaborating, because none of us can do anything all on our own, we do need to work with other people. In the tax and estate planning area, you do have to work with accountants. You do have to work with lawyers. You do have to work with the CFO and or the individuals and their families. And you've got to find what it is that they want to accomplish. And everybody has a dream as to what they want to accomplish in there. And so it's a matter of asking questions and then coming up with solutions for that.
So you're turning it into their problem, is that right?
Taking their problem and finding a solution.
Is
So,
there
I'm sorry, go ahead.
something here with a quarterback?
Yeah, I think that being a quarterback is an excellent word for that type of thing, Lawrence. Because the nature of business today, if it was complicated today, and it is, it's going to get a lot more complicated tomorrow. And we're beginning a brand new chapter in the world, really. You and I are seeing, you know, with the advent of ChatGPT back in November of 2022, and a year and a half ago. That's all that it was. And yet we saw NVIDIA come out yesterday with one quarter sales of over $20 billion. And I go back to an interview from The Economist back in January of this year between the president of Microsoft and the president of OpenAI. And as they said, and I think it pertains very much to our business today, this is the first time in history that a disruption has been global all at the same time. So the disruption that is happening in India, in China, it's happening in Canada, in the United States, and so on. And the emergence of new companies that we're seeing today, which gets back to our business, is going to be explosive. The opportunities going forward are going to be explosive, and they're going to be different. So that the series that you have initiated here is going to be part of chapter that has gone on, and I think a brand new chapter is emerging today. But the same principles of all the stuff that we do is going to be there. And the interesting thing is that the companies that we work with, the Sun Lifes and Manulifes and Canada Lifes, they've all been global for a long time. They've been global much longer than any of the banks and so on. They've been global for over 100 years. So their knowledge and background, as well as working together with us, I think is going to be preeminent on a going forward basis.
AI is the disruptor you're talking about. And a lot of people are afraid that AI will eat our lunch or eat their lunch. Do you think there'll always be a place where there will be a place for independent advisors, independent agents in an AI world?
I think there'll be a greater room for independence today in going forward than there ever has been. I think that the companies that are going to be emerging and the wealth that is going to be created, the new jobs that are going to be happening, the new forms, it's going to be international, not just national. And so I think borders and barriers are going to quickly have to come down. And I think that our business is going to be expanding exponentially on a going forward basis. And therefore, we're going to need to collaborate a lot more even than we do today.
And is that where the quarterbacking that you do comes in?
That's where the quarterbacking is going to be needed. You know, as we were talking about earlier this week, you know, the grandfather of AI is Geoffrey Hinton. And Geoffrey Hinton is here in Toronto, at the University of Toronto. He is regarded as the grandfather of AI. And yet, you know, and we should be celebrating that. We should be looking at all the companies and how do we take that information? How do we get that into the schools? How do we get that so that our ankle biters today are going to grow up to be the leaders of tomorrow? We have that opportunity. And as a matter of fact, that's what I was working on earlier this morning.
All right, so how, you're a lifelong learner. So you spend a lot of time reading about this. Many people don't. How do you think agents can become involved with AI and start to use it to their advantage?
Great question. I think we should be going back to the insurance companies. And because, first of all, a life insurance company, you know, is different from a bank. A life insurance company takes money from its clients, invests it, and then gives some back to clients and some to shareholders. But they're an enormous, large investment corporations. And to think that they are going to be at the forefront of AI, yes, they are. And I think looking and encouraging them and asking them and getting involved with them in terms of the marketing, the future marketing of their products in there. What are they going to be looking at? What are they going to be looking for? And I think that people such as me and others should be identifying and working with people who are much younger, who are going to be much greater and adaptable to this rapidly changing environment that we're in. Again, coming back to ChatGPT, November 22. That's it. That was the beginning. You said, holy smokes. Now we're in a global environment. Well, how much of are we thinking beyond the narrow confines of what we have had? Are we adaptable enough as entrepreneurs to open up the doors and say, where are there new opportunities emerging that I could attach to? I haven't any idea, but I know they're there. And they are going to be explosive.
So these are businesses that you think will be the most profitable or the fastest growing then in the future. So you'd be looking for businesses that are on the edge and into this space if you were a young man starting up today?
Yeah, I would be looking for entrepreneurs, bottom line, because every entrepreneur is going to have to be, every successful entrepreneur is going to be using artificial intelligence one way or another, whether that's in the medical field, in the educational field, whether that's in the astronauts. You know, the biggest entrepreneur that we've got to look to these days is Elon Musk. He is the single greatest entrepreneur that we have ever had. You know, we look at Henry Ford and what he did. He was a great entrepreneur, a great disruptor. We look at Steve Jobs and he was a great disruptor. But they all focused on one industry. Now we've got an individual who has taken on, I guess, 6 different industries, and he disrupted them all. That's just, to me, that is the beginning. And I know that around Toronto, I know around Canada, I know there are bubbling ideas ready to come forward in there. And that's the exciting thing. It's going to be a brand new exciting, positive environment.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny. I was reading 3 articles this week, one about underwriting using AI and how it was improving both the speed and accuracy of underwriting, but still required a human underwriter with a little bit of judgment and experience to ask the right questions and to review the information, make sure it's correct, because it could be the wrong person. The second, interesting enough, was about the question of using AI to simplify what you write. You know, we all tend to be very prolix. We're verbose and we're prolix. AI might not be able to fix the verbose part, the talkative part, but the written word it can make much more concise. And the third was in helping to identify the best opportunities. And that was something I thought was fantastic as well, because that Project 100 was a really rudimentary way of identifying the best opportunities. If agents, I mean, you know, there are all sorts of people offering us referrals. If AI could say, well, yeah, but this one's a good one, you'll do well with this one, that might be some real advantage. So I find that a little bit exciting. Charlie, you're a lifelong learner, as I said, but you're also a big reader. And you don't necessarily read, but listen. Tell me about that.
Well, that's been a great thing. When I started, I walk generally anywhere sort of 12 to 20,000 steps a day. And that can be, you know, boring as hell if you were just walking down the street or anything. So I started listening to books, and I was looking at the book that I just finished yesterday, which was on the Dominion, which was the building of the CPR. It's sort of unbelievable what they went through in that. But that was my 660th book that I've read in the last few years. And I look back and I wouldn't have read 660 pages in a year in there. But by going out and walking, when I'm on a bus, when I'm in a car, I'm listening to so many different books, different types, different. It's just been fascinating for me to be able to do that. So every day, I don't know how many hours a day, I listen to books of all different kinds, and been very, very exciting and very rewarding for me.
And do you also listen to all of these magazines that you read? You mentioned The Economist earlier.
The Economist, I probably focus on more than any other journal. And that's really because of their global reach. I didn't realize until a little while ago that they have about 60 million readers on the various platforms that they have around the world. I was astounded at that, but I do get their information, which therefore is global, which I think fits into the environment that we're rapidly moving into. And I also listen to their experts on the podcasts that they have, generally at least one a month. And the last one that I listened to again earlier today, which was with Zanny Beddoes at Davos, interviewing both the president of Microsoft and OpenAI. That was incredible. That was just fabulous listening to those two people who probably know more about what is going to be happening tomorrow than all the rest of us put together.
You keep mentioning global. You started almost globally. You started pan-European in a pan-European way with your finance career. Are you still working globally? Are you still working multinationally?
Excuse me. No, not no. That do I work with individuals and families that are global? The answer to that is yes. Do I focus on what I'm doing on a national basis? That is where I focus, but do collaborate with people, who are who have global expertise.
So you're concentrating on Canadian entities and people, is that because of the tax rules? Because the world hasn't yet caught up with with everybody else going global?
And I think that's exactly right. It's because of the tax rules. But when you listen to that broadcast that I was just mentioning to you, when you listen to them, they're looking for global regulation. They're already talking about the need for global regulation so that Japan and China and Canada, the United States, Europe and South America and Africa, that there is a global thing. They're already talking about that. And at this nascent stage of how all of this is developing, they recognize the need for that. And they're very much proponents of it. So do I think that the business has the potential to expand beyond our borders? The answer is yes. Do I have any idea how? But you can't contain this explosive growth just because there's a national border.
So regulation is one thing, because regulation is really a protected. Well, everybody is trying to mind their own lunch. Everybody's trying to protect their own business, including regulators. Do you talk with these things about your clients?
Yes, and invite them to various get-togethers where there is AI is going to be a discussion point right now. As an example, there is a meeting coming up in early April where a lady is going to be speaking on artificial intelligence. She is from the UK. She was regarded by the New York Times as the #1 leading author last year. Her name is Verity Harding. And so I just bought a bunch of tickets and I've invited people to that. And that is going to be, who is not interested in AI today? Everybody is. Everybody that you and I talk to is going to be interested in that. And how they're going to use, are they going to use it in their business? I haven't any idea. But we all know that we are and are going to be impacted by artificial intelligence.
Throughout all the years I've known you, you've always been ahead of the pack in your thinking. You've been a thought leader. Clearly, you're doing that with your clients as well. Do you try to bring them together to discuss these things, other than taking them to sessions? Do you try to have some sort of conversations with them all together afterwards?
No, I haven't done that. Is that something that makes sense? Yes, but every family and every individual probably carves their own path. And so what I am looking at is looking to be a collaborator and bringing people together and letting them take it from there and expanding their own network beyond that. But that's going to be much greater in the future than it has been in the past.
So going back to what Brian Henley was saying about finders, minders, and grinders, you're a finder. You put things together. And then do you hand them off to others and let them run them?
Yeah. And I think, this morning I was in touch with somebody in California, somebody in Ottawa, and somebody here in Toronto. And that was on a collaborative basis. And that was on collaboration. Well, I'll tell you exactly what it was. That was on collaborating. I think there are two areas that are going to see the greatest change, period. One is in healthcare and the other one is going to be in education. And so if we're able to bring together, I was linking together with somebody at Microsoft in California. And I also want to do that with the same person here in Toronto. And I was talking with a director of education here in Toronto who's heading off for a conference on tomorrow in Anaheim for a week, and he'll be with 70 directors of education. And the idea was, okay, we need to work together. We need to collaborate. We can't afford to wait. We have kids in grade 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's where we gotta start. And we need to bring that together and break down barriers very quickly, because the barriers are falling all around us. We've got to find a way to break that down. And that gets back to the learning partnership and other things. So that was the beginning this morning.
If you were coming into this business today, what would you try to focus on, knowing what you know now?
I would be focusing on looking for areas where there are entrepreneurs and where people are bubbling along with new ideas and so on, new anything. And I would want to get involved with those organizations. I don't know what it would be. Excuse me. I would be looking at those organizations where there's research and development going on. And I'd want to be part of those organizations. And I'd be looking for those people in accounting firms and so on who are looking after young entrepreneurial organizations. And some are going to win, some are going to lose. That's always the way that it has been. But they're going to be exciting people. It's going to be dynamic. It is not going to be slow and methodical. It's going to be explosive. And that's going to be an awful lot of fun. Are they going to need insurance for all kinds of reasons? Yes. Are they going to need group insurance? Yes. Are they going to need disability and critical illness insurance? Yes. Are they going to need life insurance for partnership as well as for estate planning? The answer is yes. So Canada has an opportunity. You know, if you look at Jeffrey Hinton here in Toronto is recognized as the founder of AI. AI in ChatGPT is only a year and a half old. Somehow in there, we have an unusual opportunity to find something in there, to pull it together, and to have some very exciting, dynamic companies. I think we have a chance to have some exciting government opportunities if they get out of the way, and maybe that's the best opportunity of all. So we have the people, we have the opportunity, and get involved with people who are young and dynamic and moving forward.
I want to deal with something in your personal life. One of your sons has been on the leading edge of something very closely related to this. Would you like to talk about that for a moment?
So our son Scott he is a serial entrepreneur. Right from university, not right from high school days on up. So he would be seen as a serial entrepreneur, and believe me, he would not be in any bureaucracy. And that is wonderful. And so he has lived and worked in first of all in Canada, then for 7 years in Moscow, then in San Francisco, back here, then in Dublin, then in London, England. And then about a decade ago, he started up a company by the name of Contact Monkey. And that is an email tracking company. And he grew that. It was going along for about 6 years and without any debt. And he grew that to the point, and then 4 or 5 years ago, he pivoted. And every entrepreneur has to pivot all the time. It's a gut call as to what you're doing. And he saw an opportunity. And so then this last fall in November, he had been working with, again, lawyers and accountants dealing with emerging technologies. And grew the company. A private equity group out of Washington came along and have a significant investment in his company. And now it has a chance of even doubling again over this year. So that's been very exciting. Our other son is is now in Dubai, and he has a job in Moscow, and he's also president of a lithium mining project in Argentina. So very entrepreneurial, and couldn't be happier or prouder of what they have done.
And these are the types of people you'd be looking for today if you were 30 years younger.
Absolutely.
10 years younger.
Absolutely. Those are the types of things that the entrepreneurs that are there, and they're going to be more now than there ever have been.
Charlie, tell me, I mean, we were involved in CALU.
Yep.
I mentioned that you were a lifelong learner. What do you do to learn about your profession?
So I read every day. Whether that be I go, on the various learning things from the insurance companies. I am on with them all of the time. And so whether that be the tax and estate planning people within the insurance companies, or the tax and estate planning people within the legal or accounting firms that we work with, that is a key part of listening and learning every day. So yes, that's a continuum that I don't think will ever stop.
I don't know that you have to, and you've certainly been successful at it. I've been watching you now for nigh on 30 years, and with great amazement. And you've done extraordinarily well, but more importantly, you've done extraordinary good work. And it seems to me that's a big part of what insurance agents are about. We're now in our 5th interview, and everybody has, to a person, been involved in their community and making a difference. Your difference has been with children to the greatest extent, from what I can tell, to the future, which is a remarkable thing. You were talking about health. You've been talking about learning. You've been talking about, I guess, helping children to be comfortable with what their parents are and do. That's what Take Them to Work must be about. What advice would you give to anybody, whether they're in the business or not, if they were 25, 30 years old and just really getting going in business?
Just as you identified there, Lawrence, giving back is such a key component. And I don't know anybody, or very few people in this business, that are not continually looking for ways to give back into their community. I think that's just part of the nature of the individual, that they do want to give back. They're interested in giving back. And whether that's different from people who are in bureaucracies, or some do and some don't, but I have found that just about everybody in the insurance or financial planning area is involved with their families, with their communities, and CALU and advocates and others are examples of giving back. And you are a prime example, by the way, of the amount of time that you have taken, not only in this endeavor, but in a number of other things that you have done. So again, thank you to you for your leadership in this endeavor, and all the other ones that you have done as well.
Thank you. That's very kind of you. So this is now, as I mentioned, the 5th in the series. We're booked through the end of September with only a few gaps. Over the next several weeks, Cindy Bowden will be interviewed by Julian Wise, Ted Polsey by Barry Pascal, Terry Zavitz by Paul Burbinier, Dave Patriarch by Jim Ruda, and then I will be interviewed by Ted Polsey. So we have quite the agenda put together. You'll have to register for each one individually on the Zoom site. That is my inadequacy. I didn't know how to set it up properly. And I've discovered that if I try to change it, everybody gets turfed out, so I can't change it. But we're going ahead. If you know of anyone who isn't on the list or who we should be talking with about interviewing, I would appreciate hearing from you, please. I know a lot of people, but even I and all of the interviewers don't know everyone in the business who's successful. So please let us know and please get back to you. We hope to see you next week at the same time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Thursday morning. Thanks very much. Have a great day and a great week. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Lawrence.